Hi, everyone. Can I request all of you all to take your seats? Yeah, so we're getting ready for the last final session. Just to recap for the panelists who are coming and joining me, because particularly they're all from public sector. That today in the morning we started with digital with Dr. Hans. He took us through explaining the foundation and backbone why digital is important, especially making sure governance, trust, and efficiency is underpinned by that. I love the second section where it's on development, learning the South Korea or Korean story and how they moved. Phenomenal. They were our size of the economy, and today they are $1 trillion. They took hard calls. It chose made certain choices, right or wrong. They invested behind it. And then parallelly, we had views from the private sector, from local as well as MNCs to tell what they want as changes to enable them to grow, what they look for. There was a capital market specialist who said what they look for in terms of attractiveness in terms of investing. Surprisingly, everything was quite simple, just unlock some of the bottlenecks and make sure there's political and economic and policy stability. So the final session is on crafting a pragmatic action plan. It's going to be a plan versus just a statement. That's what we're looking forward to from the panelists, to propel Sri Lanka into a transformational growth trajectory. Building on today's morning sessions, we will be wanting to see what the key policymakers, particularly from finance, we've got them managing the portfolios of finance, we've got entrepreneurship, SME development, investments, SOEs particularly, and exports. How do they come together to craft a strategy to take us through the next level of exponential growth? Sri Lanka has been through the IMF, I think, program 17 times. There was a data point given recently that out of that, we have come to stability 10 times. What we struggle and never did right is taking the hard calls on reforms to move out of stability into growth. And it's not an easy place for this government to take on, but what is commendable is they're continuing the IMF program, so that's a win, but how do we support them, and how do we like to see what the private sector also can do to come out to help the government? Things like I picked up from the development is how can you move from spending to investing as a government, from regulating to more creating as a government. And one statement I wrote, and this is for the 4 panelists, it was, you're not, and I did mention it to Chaturanga here, is that they said that most governments come in and they know what to do, but they don't know how to get elected after they do what they are supposed to do. So that's a chicken and egg, and looking forward to this discussion. So as housekeeping rules, there are some rules here. Okay, all questions, please send it to slido.com, and it's on your browser. There's a QR code, and the code is 2439072 to access it. People connecting virtually, please put your question into the Zoom message box, and please keep your mics off. So the full profiles of our panelists are put in the docket there. However, to do justice, to make sure that what's unique is all 4 resource people are public sector now, but they all have been with private sector. And I'll start to give a very brief introduction. It's not to do justice, but I just want to give you all time on at the podium. So the Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning, Dr. Harshana Suryaperuma. Dr. Harshana Suryaperuma is a fellow member of CIMA and former fellow of ACCA, associate member of CIM UK and an MBA from PIM, and of Sri Jayewardenepura University. His PhD is from the Management of Science of University of Malaysia, and he has over 30 years of experience in 3 continents, Africa, Australia, and Asia. He's a member of the Advisory Committee of the Corporate Governance of Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. His alma mater was Royal College and the member of NPP Council. Then we have next is Deputy Minister Chaturanga Abesinghe, who is holding the portfolio of Deputy Minister, Ministry of Entrepreneurship and Industry. Chaturanga obtained his BSc in Finance, special from University of Jayewardenepura, and he's also an associate of CIMA, 2 CIMA people. I think CIMA marketing people might jump onto this now. 8 years industry experience in finance, operations, and IT. And he was elected to the Parliament of Sri Lanka in 2024 from the Colombo district. Then we also have Mr. Arjuna Herath, chairman of BOI. Of course, everybody knows Arjuna from his extensive time in Ernst & Young, but he also has been serving as a chairman of, I think he's been with in Nepal, in the first bank there. He recently retired as senior partner and head of consulting of ENY. He was the inaugural chairman of Data Protection Authority of Sri Lanka, and he was the CEO, founding CEO of the Nepal Sri Lanka Merchant Bank in Nepal. And lastly is Mr. Mangala Wijayasinghe, CEO and chairman of EDB of Sri Lanka. Mr. Herath is an accomplished leader with 25 years of senior experience. Prior to this, he was the COO of Browns PLC. His leadership experience spans including pharmaceutical, chemical, consumer electronics, engineering products, and lubricants. He's obtained his bachelor's in economics at the University of Jayewardenepura. So without any further ado, may I invite the 4 panelists to join me at the podium. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. And so this session is about growth, transformation growth. Growth we'll be looking at is technically, if you look at in a layman's term, we'll be looking at what you can support the existing portfolio, where can you bring new areas into the growth trajectory, and of course the enablers in terms of capability and capacity. How can you all support and what would you all do differently? What we are not looking at is like data points of where we are in terms of growth, what we didn't achieve. We all know what we didn't achieve. We all know we have aspiration of 45 billion by 2030, but 36 out of merchandise maybe. We all know that you all are having an aspiration. We currently do sub 1.5% in terms of FDI. But what I would love to hear, and I think the audience is waiting to hear, is what you're going to do differently in terms of achieving these, and where do you would address certain changes in structural or policy and reforms to achieve this. So first question I think I'm going to put towards Dr. Harshana. So on the IMF program, now that there is stability, how does the government plan on balancing fiscal consolidation and also investing in growth-led investments in the public sector, particularly given the fact that your fiscal space is very tight?
Thank you very much. And for Chambers, thank you very much for inviting and having us here. For a change, I suppose we have a people on the in the panel, many of us representing, and we were on your side a few months back. So we speak the same language. I think we understand the challenges, the dynamics in the operating environment that all of us are in. So that's one advantage. Very importantly, within the tight fiscal space, since we are in the IMF program, it is very important for us to continue some of the measures that they have advocated and advised. At the same time, we are working with them very closely to ensure the allocations are used to the best use. That's where the capital investment, in order to create the production economy that we highlighted, there's an amount of public investment that need to go there. Public investment to the right areas to generate the right results. Some of them could be to provide the push for the SME sector. Some of the investments could be to provide the infrastructure. Some of the push that needs to get in to be upgrade the regulatory framework, likewise. So a significant amount has been identified as to be provided in the budget to provide that push to generate the growth that the country is waiting for. As you said, it's not about looking back, but it's about the future, to ensure the government drive its policies in a manner to facilitate growth that the private sector is looking at. Government is driving its policies to facilitate the efficiency the private sector is looking at, industries are looking at. Government is facilitating policies to get Sri Lanka connected to the global value chain. So these are our important headlines that we want to continue. There is an institutional framework that has been put on place to deliver this one. Capable teams have been identified and allocated. So as a combination of these efforts, not just by allocating amounts in the budget, results, we don't expect just by allocating amounts, results will come. Otherwise, in the past, so much of billions have been allocated, results weren't there. So the difference in the equation is in addition to allocating these amounts, there is a structure put in place. National policies are being looked at. Instead of individual discretion driving who should get the benefit and who shouldn't, the fairness being advocated, promoted through these policies that we are developing, we are working as we speak. Based on this approach, that is where we expect the revenue to come into play for us to invest back into the society. So revenue, we noted the numbers recently, historical achievements in terms of if you look at the revenue generated in customs, revenue generated in IRD. After 120 years, I was told the highest revenue reported in excise as well. However, if revenue is generated only through means of increasing taxes and rates, that will not be the best outcome for a nation, because the burden will be shared by the few who paid, whereas there's a larger component of economy out there that we need to invite them into the formal system. As a result, the revenue will be grown, but the individual burden that we shoulder will go down. So collectively, Kasturi, there are measures in place, policies in place, and we are actively engaged and working with a lot of support from the government servants, government staff members, team members. And it is a challenge at the beginning for them to understand who we are, because they were used to a traditional set of politicians in the past. Whereas we look at, as I said, we are from the same segments that you represent. So it was the getting used to the new team who have taken over to provide the leadership, for us to get used to them, their approaches, etc., and for them to get used to our approaches also. And so far it is very rewarding, I would say, very satisfying for both parties, because it is the country's interest at first we have put. So it takes some time for them to digest as well this different culture. It is the new culture that we advocated, the change of culture that we want this country to go through, the paradigm shift that we are looking at, is to provide that experience, competency is brought in at the highest level. It's beyond popularity, it's beyond popular politics. So I suppose this will help us to achieve the deliveries that that people are expecting from us. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Harshan, and I'll come back to you on that question. Chaturanga, on your ministry, it has a huge part to play in reforms and transformation growth, particularly in enabling existing industries and capacity building in the new industries. How are you placed? Is the structure you operate in enabling you to do what you want? If not, what do you need to stop doing? What are you going to do new? Is your ministries, are they ready for the change?
Yeah, actually the structure is what we basically asked for. So for the first time in the recent history, the institutions which are supposed to support from SMEs to large organizations are coming under one roof, under one ministry. So namely the Export Development Board, IDB, NEDA, which supports the startups, and there was a organization under Sports Ministry that was supposed to, that was established to support SMEs, SED, that is Small Enterprise Development Division, and also we brought in the National Productivity Secretariat also under our wing. So the entire structure, Kasturi, is now with us, so we don't have any excuse to say that, we don't have the right structure to support. So apart from that, what we really wanted to do is all these institutions to work together. So that is what we've been doing for the last 2 months, to identify the duplicates. So everybody's doing training, everybody's doing awards, everybody's doing workshops. So these institutions, the people who are inside those institutions have never met each other also. So we brought them in to come to a common program. So we are kind of made a framework especially to see how do we support the established business to do it well, and how do you support the startup ecosystem and the SMEs to grow in a methodical way, because the life cycle management of a business was not looked at earlier. So when you have idea and when you want to start up, where would you go and what kind of support you would take? When you are growing and when you are getting into market, you have different challenges. And then if you want to do up a factory and get a land and bring technology, whom do you bank on? And when you want to export, obviously people knew it was EDB, but this entire life cycle management has not happened. So what we are trying to do differently now is to ensure all of these institutions are aligned to serve a particular customer. So all of you, including who are here and as well as the SMEs, now they will have their own place where the entire life cycle of that business will be managed to the Ministry of Industries, and the support will be focused on that. I think what we are really focusing now is to see how we can strengthen the value chain, because that is something that is broken. So we have very good exporters who has won the global market, but their value, the value chain is broken, because there are few areas which does not come under our ministry. That is the agriculture, the fisheries, and even the tourism and IT does not directly connect to us, but it again connects to most of the industrialists that we work with. So that is another piece that we are looking at, and especially on the startup ecosystem and the SMEs. SMEs also did not have a proper structured process for support, especially talking about their market access, capital requirements, the technical expertise, and also in terms of for them to kind of connect to networking areas. So the isolated work that has happened thus far is changing, and we want to bring it into a more of a structured, formal process, so that everybody who's part of this entrepreneurship journey has a place to go and there's a specific service that they will get from the government.
Okay, just to probe a bit, it's nice to hear. But look, your first challenge is you're consolidating most of the ministries. Remember, they are resourced with a lot of people to do the same thing, like you said, duplicate.
Yeah.
But it's somebody's job. That's why we feel the bottlenecks and slowness when we go in as external customers. Now, which means collapsing and making it simpler is going to also mean that you're taking hard calls and people would be made redundant or redeployed. Secondly, so when you say that for the startups, for example, when you say that it's going to be simpler, what does simplicity mean for a startup? They come in there, they can get their thing done, you get within walk out in 2 days, or do they still have to go through 100-odd approvals and take 2 months? I just trying to see whether you all, when you say that, do you have a definition what simplicity and efficiency and seamlessness means?
Yeah, the first thing is clarity and where would you fall and what kind of services that are available. I don't think many of you are here who has ever stepped into National Productivity Secretariat. For what, right? So basically that is there to help you to improve your productivity from day one to, being a large corporate. But when it comes to the NEDA, right, some people know about it, but some people don't know about it because they have also tried to do various things, including the IDB. So that clarity will make it simpler, Kasturi, for people to understand in my journey, what kind of support I could take. And secondly, the collaboration outspread, like across the country, all these 5 institutions have about 3,000 people on the ground. And in each of the districts, they have been working in isolation. So now we are bringing them together to task them with a specific task, end goal, so that their work becomes simpler, as well as the person who's getting that service. There is a one point of contact who would connect the rest of the institutions for their support. But if you really look at the bottlenecks, what we are having now is not, those are not due to these 5 institutions. Those are mainly due to registration, getting approval from environmental authority, getting the business registration done, getting the certifications for exports, getting the sample testing done. And these are the practical issues that we are looking for solutions, and we are trying to find solutions how to basically integrate these services into one particular place. And especially if you take at district level, there is a structure that has not worked effectively thus far, because that structure is under Ministry of Industries and IDB, where all the relevant ministries should meet every month to discuss about the difficulties of the business in that area. The water board, the electricity board, the environmental authority. So this was not been, they have not been using it effectively, which we are starting again. So from the divisional secretariat to this district committee to drive industries and support entrepreneurship, the structures are going to change in a way that your request at least will be followed up, and that request will be the person who takes that query will follow it up for you to get it done from the other institution. So when we say single window, we don't have a single window now, but at least that particular request can be done through various networks that we have and the collaborations with the other ministries.
Thanks. Can I move to Mangala from EDB? So successive EDB chairmen have had targets for exports. Now today, and we have not gone beyond 20 billion, right? Today we stand, and yesterday the president was mentioning that you have a 36 billion target for merchandise. Okay, so how confident are you of how to achieve, that you're going to achieve it? And if so, what are you going to do differently this time around? What are the specific industries you all are going to support as new? And what are you going to do differently for the existing exporters to enable them to do better?
Thank you, Kasturi, and thank you very much for Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for inviting us for this panel discussion. We believe Sri Lanka should need a multi-pronged strategy, so leveraging innovative tools and enhance global positioning and addressing structural changes. That's what we are believing to go to the new strategy level. So we have set some target for 36 billion by 2030. Actually, this is mainly based on our government's policy plan. So as a new government, set a new target for the 2030, because right now we represent 19.6% from GDP from the export sector. So our plan is to increase it to more than 25% by 2030. That's also one of the key area. Other thing is, now when we look into our export detail, so how we are going to reach this 36 billion by 2030. So when we analyze our sector-wise target, so this is mainly including merchandising export and the service export. So merchandising export, this is mainly, you know that from the textile industry is one of the key area. We are expecting more than 8.5 billion revenue by 2030. Right now it is contributing to the 5.2 billion. So we have identified some other good sectors. So right now from our total export, apparel sector represents nearly 39%. But according to the new plan, so apparel sector will represent not more than 30%. Because we have...
Could you help us to know what are the new sectors?
Yes, that's what I'm going to tell. So that is why now we have identified some other good key sectors, because now when you look into our traditional export like rubber, again the tea and rubber, we have identified new area like ICT is one of the key area. So right now we are getting 1.7 billion. So our plan is to increase to 5 billion by 2030. So when we analyze the data during last few years, we can see annual growth rate is more than 30%. So even government plan also increase this sector, because right now there are 85,000 ICT professionals in this sector. So we are trying to expand the ICT professionals. Even now the universities and the other relevant institutions, they are coming and discussing with us. So they also want to change their syllabus also based on how to produce the ICT professionals. Likewise, ICT sector is one of the key sector. Then again, I can mention that electrical and electronic sector, because that sector right now contributing 450 million. But when you look into the global demand, so actually we are planning to increase up to the 1.6 billion. So therefore some barriers there. Now we are trying to remove that barrier. So then we are trying to get the global supply chain facility also. With that we are trying to build up this sector. Likewise, we have seen that the other sector is the transport and logistic, because even very much in a good industry, transport and logistic industry right now, even 2024, it was contributed 1.9 billion. So that is the area we can further develop. The transport and logistics sector, this is including marine offshore as well. So we can see that lot of potential. So then Export Development Board we are planning to expand our strategies based on the potential area. In addition to that, Kasturi, we can mention that right now, we are exporting to the relevant only some key areas. Say that our product range we are exporting only for the few destinations. So USA is one of the key destinations. From our total export, it represents nearly 25%. All to the Europe countries, including America, it represents nearly 40%. So our plan is to, in addition to while we are expanding our export to these potential countries, so we have identified new potential other countries as well, from the South African area, including Middle East and the Asian countries. That also will be another good sector for the new product development. So we have identified the new products. Again, the new SKUs should be there, so therefore value addition, new product introduction should be very much important. Now, when you look into we believe that now Sri Lanka should diversify our export product portfolio. So mainly from our industrial growth in the growth of industrial product range. So you know that value addition mainly coming from the apparel sector. We can see some other good sectors like, again, the agricultural, some organic food sector. Again, the value addition from the spices. Those are also very much important. And the other important matter is, Kasturi, we can mention about that we are having the continuous discussion with our exporters, what is their barriers and how we are going to support them. So based on that, I believe that policy level we have to take some decision, because otherwise, even though we have good strategy, even the export development, we are having the good strategy, national export strategy, which was implemented in 2018 with the support of the industry key experts. But the problem is when we are going to implement same strategy, we struggle with some policy making decision. So that is why yesterday you know about that EDCM. After many years, we were able to reactivate that Export Development Council of Ministers. That means I want to tell you that about the EDCM matter as well. Export Development Council of Ministers. So this is the very much powerful council. This was created mainly for the expand of the export sector business. So you know, everybody knows that Export Development Board initiated in 1979, and after 92, there was no any meeting from the EDCM till 2020. From 2020 to 2025, there's no any EDCM meeting. With that, there are so many struggling with the bottlenecks from the each and every institution. So that is why this EDCM council, this should be chaired by Honorable President, including other 9 line ministers. So as Deputy Minister mentioned about that, the key other ministers like agriculture, then again trade, then transport, again harbor, again the fisheries. Likewise, there are very much potential ministers. They should involve in this EDCM, then and there they have to take a decision. So that our meeting, which held on 27th January, we took very much good decision, which helped for the industry. So that is why we are saying that the government involvement is there. So government leadership is there. We have seen the good direction. Hopefully, with that, we are trying to expand our export strategy. In addition to the our current existing export card, right now we are having the below 4,500 export category, number of exporters. So including, so when you look into our export, number of exporters, 10% exporters, 3% more than 90% our export value. Highly appreciate their support for our Sri Lankan economy, because they are that exporters, the people who are bringing this export revenue to the country. But when you look into the other exporters, so we have the 4 categories: large scale, medium, small, and micro level. Micro level exporters, we have 48% from our total export basket, number of exporters. But their contribution is 0.29%. And we have, again, small medium category. That area we have more than 38%. Their contribution is 4%. So we have to scale up their contribution to the export. That's the one of the other area. And also, as Mr. Chaturanga mentioned about that now, we have the regional level district office. So district secretariat we have. In Sri Lanka, we have nearly 331 divisional secretariat. That office itself, there are 5 officers who are working for the export. So now we are going to give them a KPI, and every month and yearly, they have to convert some exporters as a new exporters. So we are going to reward them. Like us, we have a different plan to expand the export sector in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
I'll come back to you because also while you all are incentivizing, I think capacity capability is something we need to support people with. Arjuna, so you took over as BOI chair. The previous segment, I saw the Secretary of Industry say that it takes 82 days to get a BOI approval. You must be having a magic wand to bring it down now. But we have been trying to target a $2 billion of FDI, USD. And honestly, in the past, the biggest investment has been from telcos on infrastructure, which is brought by the private sector. So what are you going to do to ensure that we come to about 2 to 3% of GDP in terms of investments? Now, what are the lessons you have learned from the past mistakes that you're going to make sure you're not going to do this, and what is something new you're going to adapt? Because I come from a place that you do the same thing over and over again, looking for a different results with the same people. It's insanity, right? And coming from Mangala's conversation of the new industries, how are you all going to work with EDB to ensure that you facilitate or attract the investments in?
Right, thank you very much, Kasuri. So, you're talking about the 2 billion investment for a year. I must say we have never achieved that. The best we did was 1.7 billion in 2018. We have an exception in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, of 2.372 billion because of the conversion of the debt at Hambantota Port into equity. So if I leave that out, the best we achieved was 1.7 billion.
But if you're looking at 3%, what are you going to do different?
Sure, I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
So the point that I'm trying to make is we never achieved also 2% of GDP. The 1.732 billion was, I think, about 1.8% of GDP. Today we are at, I think we'll end up 2024 around 84, 85 billion US dollar GDP, and 2% of that is 1.7 billion. Now, we will talk about how we want to get to, let's say, 2 billion or 2% to 3% of GDP. So the first question was why we have never got there, right? And how do we get there? And also this FDI has been widely fluctuating. Some years 600 million, some year 1.1 billion, and widely fluctuating, not sustaining itself.
Is 2% achievable?
Yes.
Then what are you going to do about it?
Yes. I'm coming to the point. So the question, first of all, why we have not got to the 2% or 2 billion would be, as I see it, is because we have been opportunistic or opportunistic on both sides, from investor side as well as from the government side, to try and it's more transaction oriented, right? We try and target an investor, we try and get that investor, and so on and so forth. But we have never been strategic as I see it. When I say strategic, I mean to achieve a sustainable level of FDI into this country, we have to position ourselves to get there. Now, what does that mean? We have to answer the question to investors, why Sri Lanka, right? Investor comes and says, why do you want to invest in Sri Lanka? That's the question we have to answer and pitch to them. Now, why would an investor want to come to Sri Lanka? Is because either you are close to market, your market that you serve, or you're close to supplies for your raw materials and so on and so forth, or you have skills that you require in that market, right? Broadly, right? These are the kind of categories. Our market is 22 million people, and that market is not sufficient for big-time investors. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to improve access to markets. I think the Deputy Minister, Harshan Suriyaperumal, announced recently that we are signing up for the FTA with Singapore. I think we are activating Sri Lanka-Thailand FTA. It's done, and I think we need to activate that. We are looking, yesterday, President at this forum mentioned that he's looking at reviewing the free trade agreement, the ETCA with India for beneficial countries. So in order to have a wider access to markets for Sri Lanka, we have to clearly go the FTA route to provide that opportunity, right? Access to supplies, I must say that that's also a very critical issue. And one of the things that I want to make here in terms of access to supply, and I think we heard Deputy Minister of Industry saying, there are bottlenecks around that in terms of, we've had issues around that catering to supply chain of investors, right? And we are very clearly, one of the things is, what we have found is, there's a level playing field for BOI concessions when it comes to foreign investors or Sri Lankan investors. There is no discrimination. You achieve a certain threshold, whether it's a Sri Lankan investor or foreign investor, they do get concessions, right? Now, in fact, from a BOI perspective, the investments, the foreign investors, Sri Lankan investors are lagging the foreign investors. We have less Sri Lankan investors in BOI bringing investments than foreign investors. And I'm asking
So
Sri
how
Lanka.
are you going to, leaving the Sri Lankan investor, or even if you take both, what would BOI be doing to attract the FDI? While there is market access, you gave 3 pillars. Is there one pillar which you think we have a right to compete with, or something you can really work on?
Yes. So what we're trying to do is, we're talking about access to supply. We want to have the backward integration that's happening. Why are our apparel investors going overseas, going and setting up in Kenyan region, South African region? Why is our investors in the coconut, in the milk coconut industry going to Indonesia? Is because lack of supplies, right? So one of the things we are doing is trying to create trying to create a down to get the supply chain going. So one of the things we have done is we have created for apparel industry the Erawood zone, which in fact is manufacture fabric and textile. We're hoping the apparel industry, we have representations from apparel industry here. We have one company, we have at least 5 companies we want to attract this year, so that the fabric textile park can supply to the apparel industry. Similarly, pharmaceuticals. This country is attracting buying pharmaceutical from overseas as well as encouraging pharmaceutical manufacturing here. We just created a pharma zone, and we will market that pharma zone for people to come and manufacture pharmaceuticals in this country, right? I'm just giving 2 examples for you on backward integration strategy to get to supplies, so catering to foreign investors and the local investors, okay? On the skill side, very clearly, we are short of talent and skills, and we are very clearly wanting to get to the technical and vocational education and training, TVET sector. We've spoken to the Prime Minister, wanting investments into the TVET sector to be able to develop the skills base this country requires for light engineering and the technology sector. Now, in that respect, we have investors who have shown interest to actually invest in the TVET sector. People are asking, why can't we manufacture solar panels in this country when we are going renewable energy and demand for solar panels? And I just can't, and the answer to that has been, there's no skills here to be able to do that manufacturing, in addition to, of course, some of the raw materials. So whilst I spoke about the access to market, the supply and skills, one of the most strategic advantages of this country is this location, right? A unique selling proposition. How do we really leverage on that? And the idea here is to get the logistics sector moving.
Sorry, Arjuna.
Yes.
I've been in corporate for a long time,
Yes.
and I've seen so many governments, and they've said the same thing of location, accessibility, creating zones, but it didn't work. So we still have location. Logistics and maritime is, I still personally believe it's a thrust industry and a sector, but it doesn't work. What is BOI going to do to make sure you attract, are you all going to give special incentives? Why should they come and invest here in the industry? Sri Lanka, for domestic market, it's not big enough. It's a through market. What is it that you're going to do differently?
Yes. So do we have limitations on incentives? We are under IMF regime. We have a focus. I don't think incentives would be a journey that we're going to travel. It's about creating a conducive environment to get to investments. Now, in relation to logistics, clearly, Sri Lanka Ports Authority has announced 3 logistics hubs within the SLPA. Right? We have one investor who is actively we are negotiating, and we'll put that down. We'll have 2 more, and we have told the government clearly we want joint ventures in this logistics hub. Government government will get to PPP partnerships and drive the logistics up. We are also talking about the connectivity between our zones and these logistics hubs in order to, from rail and road perspective, in order to create that logistic environment for exporters to really flourish.
Okay, okay, thanks. Thanks, Arjuna. Harshana, there are lots of questions to you on one topic, and I've also put it as a question. So in the morning when we listened to the Korean conversation, we realized one part of their growth story was also addressing public sector reforms, right? And while it's tough, they had to look at it from privatization as well as being more productive. So questions from the public I've got is how can SOEs be more productive? But my question to you is also included in that is, as government, are you all still, is your view that you want to be in operating businesses, or do you want to be more on a governance? Secondly, your view on reforms. Yesterday, the president did acknowledge SOE takes a lot of our revenue in terms of the costs. To become efficient is imperative, which also means it's a hard call in terms of restructures and resources and where you redeploy. While it's unpalatable, where would you go with the SOEs, and how tough are the reforms? What kind of tough reforms you're willing to take?
The question on whether should government be in business vis-a-vis leaving all the business and focusing only on the governance and other scenarios. If you look at some of the countries who have succeeded and come a long way, those governments are having a fair share of their fair share in businesses as well. So the question is not about whether government should be in business or not. I would look at it that way. It's about should government businesses or own businesses, or if there's a stake owned by the government, should those businesses be operating in an efficient manner, or should it be contributing to corruption? Are they adopting best practices, providing some of the services that private sector may not be either interested or may not be viable, etc. So there are multiple reasons for government to get engaged, have a share in this operating environment. However, when those segments are mature, when there are so many players and operators from the private sector, then obviously the need for government to compete may not be there. The case is not that compelling. So we take the same view which we explained prior to the elections as well. We look at some of the SOEs as providing a crucial service or part of infrastructure, the way how they are delivering. If you look at telecommunication, it is not just an entity, but it's operating or delivering the infrastructure that all the businesses who are seated here are looking for. So if that particular entity is not investing in the technology or to be pine with the rest of the global developments, etc., we as a country will have an issue. So this is why we believe some of the SOEs could continue. Some of the SOEs need to improve their operating model or capital model, but some of them we would like to invite investments into those, particularly through private-public partnerships. Yesterday also, Etchi mentioned very clearly, we are looking at some of those well-governed entities sometimes to identify them, to see whether the value proposition can be expanded by opening into private investments. Maybe they are currently profitable, but may not have reached their full potential in terms of either operating scale or in terms of profitability, reaching out to other markets, etc. So we are looking at multiple options. As of now, competent boards have been appointed for the new boards to take a fresh look at it and to see, in their view, should it be continue to play the role what they are playing as of now, or to take the economy to the next level? Should there be a different approach? That different approach may be because incremental changes will not take Sri Lanka from where we are to to the 36 billion exports, so including tourism, 45 billion of revenue that we are looking at. We need to take a different approach to take the country to the next level. That approach includes bringing in much needed reform to some of the SOEs that you asked. Sometimes the conversations were difficult in the past for reforms because the staff or the stakeholders involved in those operations were having doubts whether these reforms are done, is it in the best interest of the country, or whether these reforms are brought in to serve or to benefit individuals or politicians, etc. Whereas now the equation has changed. People have tasked the government to look at what is best for the country. So in that approach, when we are trying to approach the same problem with this new mandate, we believe the tough negotiations will be there, but those negotiations, those discussions will be much productive because we come with the same interest to the discussion table to take the country to the next level, to provide the best benefit to employees, stakeholders, to add value to the supply chain by doing these changes. So I'm sure the business community will be happy to some of the changes or the reforms that we will be proposing. The staff will be, we will be able to entice them to some of the proposals that we are going to bring in. Why? Because we are going to create this structure to add value, take these individual entities to the next level of their potential. So in that journey, some of those will continue to be with the government. Some we will invite for PPP type of models, some of the untapped resources in the country that we didn't make use of. So there will be new entities that is getting created to harness the potential that we have as a country. Obviously, some of the entities we might have to hand it over to the business community to take it to the next level. So it's a combination. We don't look at SOEs as a burden to the country. We want to look at SOEs as how could they add value to the country. In that equation, some of them could add value while they are being with the government. Some of them could add value while they take the path of PPP with the 4P, 4th also, public, private, and people participation very importantly. And some of them obviously could be handed over to business community to manage them better. So it's a combination of factors that we are looking at. If I miss something, yes.
Harshanev, just to probe a bit, if you just take state institutions, forget enterprises where you can privatize. Currently, we have, while like the President said, public service is essential, but it is not efficient, and that's the perception and experience of people. Inefficiency is coming from complex structures because it has come over, each time some government came in, they employed people and they've doubled the resources there, which means you need to do surgery to become, you need to become efficient, so if you define yourself as wanting to be efficient, you have to do drastic surgery to achieve that. And what is do you all have like a target of what efficiency stands for in terms of people employed in public sector, 30% less or 40% less? Or if you don't, and I do understand it's a tough call and it's a part of a journey, at least have we taken a first step of freezing all recruits into public service and looking at redeployment? Because whether we like it or not, you walk in, I must tell you, my experience is when you hit the core of the public service, it's efficient inside. To get to the core of it, you've gone through lots of people who are passing the same paper to 10 different people, and you wonder they ask the same question. So it's not easy, it's human beings. But do you all have a plan for that? And how long do you think the roadmap would be?
Sure. Efficiency is a key issue. So this is where there's a separate ministry, a dedicated ministry headed by HE, none other than HE is created to facilitate the digital economy. In today's context, most of the work that we are currently doing in brick and mortar type of entities could be provided, those services could be provided digitally. So people from far away need not to come all the way to Colombo to get work done. People from overseas need not to reach out to Sri Lanka. If the information is available, clarity of where to go to get what they are looking for is available online. And there are systems, so much of systems available out there. If we bring them, those systems into the government structure on a methodical basis, I think the question of efficiency can be addressed to a great level. So we can provide a service. You asked whether do we have an idea of where we need to go? Yes, we do. To provide a service in parallel to some of the best governed countries are offering out there. But we know it's a journey. We won't be able to get there in a day. It's going to take some time. But our ambition is to take Sri Lanka to that level. So our businesses in Sri Lanka will experience within this 5 years of government those efficiencies that we were waiting for decades. Journey has already begun. I'll give some examples. The national single window, we've spoken about for years, but there's no outcome as of now. But if we wait for another 3 years, 2.5 years or so, the agencies, the project agencies are currently expecting to get those implemented. That's a long time to wait. So business world is moving. We need to provide some solutions until we get there. So a quick wins or some examples are Import and Exchange Controller was providing all their services on manual basis. So I would say most of their service based on paper. The Import and Exchange Controller moved into a paperless virtual environment from 1st January this year. So Sri Lanka Standards Institution is delivering already for a while paperless operations. Obviously for samples you have to go to carry the samples to the institution. Apart from that, services are provided online. We have a very sophisticated system, but there are advanced versions out there that government is using, Asikuda, to manage our customs operations, some of the agencies connected to customs. We noted when these challenges are there because systems have not improved. Infrastructure in these agencies have not improved in the recent past to keep up with the demand of the businesses. As a result, there are bottlenecks, there are delays, but within this short period of time, the Asikuda system or the custom system was having provisions to allow Sri Lanka institutions, the standards institutions to know how many containers are assigned to them and as a result are waiting on the queue. So all this time there was no feed or communication up and down, whatever assigned, a manual record would come and they'll start processing that one. Since December we started engaging on this matter. We got the chambers involved, 5 different chambers came, we had discussions with them, we got the stakeholders in the national single window, we understood what are the things that we could do now and requested the Asikuda system to provide access, view access to some of these agencies. As a result, as of today, Sri Lanka Standard Institution can log into the national system and view how many containers are assigned to them. Food Authority can log into the system. As I checked on Monday, they have got the access. They can check how many containers are assigned to them. How many containers of rice are pending or waiting, for example, or food articles are waiting and assigned for their clearance. Similarly, animal production, how many containers are awaiting with required material imported to them. About 6 different agencies were provided access within the last 1 month or so. So there are efficiency improvements as we go also. We are working towards the implementation of the comprehensive national single window, but there are efficiency improvements in that process as well to facilitate what you all are looking for. You also ask about the number of staff that we have. Do we have plan for repurposing, etc.? There is already there is a freeze in terms of hiring due to the economic calamity the country had to go through. However, in many of the institutions at certain level, there are dire requirements. We need staff members. We need capacity to provide an efficient service. But as a policy, it is continued that we will not politicize these institutions and use public institutions for political purposes to give jobs, to get votes. That is why these institutions have become a burden to the country, which is an open secret. But our approach is not to travel that path, but at the same time look after the staff members who are already there, repurpose, upskill them, use them for purposes, since we are going on a digital drive also, to train them on these areas, to connect them to the value-adding processes. That's where our digital ministry is giving us guidance and ways to move forward. So a lot of plans are in place. Some of the plans have already started working. It's not a hypothetical journey alone. Some of the plans have already started working, and some of those implementations, as I mentioned, is paying dividends already. So we are determined to continue this journey. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Chaturanga, this is for you. And there are questions also on plans of SMEs and the role. Yesterday, the president actually mentioned on, and I thought which was so relevant, is economic and grow when every citizen is economically active, and which meant that we have to have inclusive growth, especially in the rural area. And the backbone has to be SMEs. So the question from you is, on SMEs, what is your roadmap to firstly align yourself with maybe the EDB and BOA on the industries which are going to focus, the capabilities which would differentiate us in terms of competing, and creating that capacity within these rural areas, and of course creating the capabilities for them to take part in the economy. The second aspect is, if you do that, how do you finance? Do you have any plans for SME bank coming in?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the policy of economically enabling every citizen, there are two parts to it. One is providing with right skill, that is the education path, and also allowing people to get into the economic activities through entrepreneurship, and probably even skill today is also a self-entrepreneur process. So what we are trying to do is, first we now already distinguished, like a lifestyle business to serial entrepreneurship. That is something that we need to break, because we generally term everybody as entrepreneurs, but most of them, we saw the data, is that 90% of them earn about below 10 million a year. So whether you call them entrepreneurs or you call them doing some earnings for living, right? So that is something distinguishedly we need to understand, because there are a lot of people who would get into some economic activity. So enabling them is a process that has been there. I think that is possible to continue, but real requirement is, can we create businesses at these rural areas which is connected to the value chain? That's why I said earlier also, rather we are expecting somebody to come up with, obviously there will be people who will come up with something new and try to break the market. But if you really look at it, if you can induce or if you can educate youngsters to be entrepreneurs in certain areas of growth. For example, now we are getting into boat building as an industry, and it's going to grow. So who's willing to do the ropes? Who's willing to do the electrical, technical side of it? Who's going to do the painting? So if you really look at the growth potential, there's enough opportunity for businesses to start up.
Just sorry to interrupt, just a question on the boat building. We've had Colombo Dockyard, which is now up for sale. What is it that makes it Sri Lanka, and why do we think that we should go behind that industry, and why do you think Sri Lanka will succeed?
So currently it has shown great, enormous potential, the growth that they have taken over the last 3 to 4 years. And the technical capabilities have increased, that there is huge demand that is not delivered also. And then we are being surrounded by the sea. There will be a lot of opportunity for us to kind of launch certain, certain vessels and different type of boats, and even to have them as, yards of, parking. And it also connects to the tourism industry. So there is potential. So what I want to say was that even in all these things, nobody has gone and thought given the children, this is the type of SMEs you can do, because if you really look at most of the growth countries, you have large businesses, and the supply chain of that business is done by the SMEs. So that is the disconnect that we have today. And I think that knowledge, where do you go, what you want to do, and what kind of a product or a service that is required to make Sri Lanka bigger. Because we see a lot of SMEs competing among each other. Our GDP is at 86 billion and growing probably at 5%. So what basically happens is somebody is eating into somebody's demand, right? But if you really look at the global market and think Sri Lanka as part of that entire value chain, the new startups and the SMEs has to think, how do you add value to the global value chain and also become productive enough so that you can compete even with the imports. So in order to do this, the knowledge piece and the advocacy and the capacity building will have to continue in these rural areas, and especially connecting the rural areas to large export markets. Like, if you take the coconut and the rubber and the tea, there is enormous potential on the ground that you can be part of the value chain. So in terms of Kasturi financing and getting started, one of the biggest barriers for startups or the SMEs is not having spaces. Because if you take the lot of bankrupt or, NPL SMEs we talk to, they have had a brilliant idea. They would have done a piece of good product or service out there, and they have gone and bought a land, and they have gone and built a building, right? So that is the biggest investment they do upfront. But if you really take other countries, there is spaces like incubator spaces where you can, the building is provided as on a rent, so you can start your business, get your quality right, get your product right, and now you are ready to expand into a large building or of your own. So that piece is missing. And the financing piece, currently we don't have any loan scheme today if you don't have a land. So currently the RDB just launched a loan scheme for business, which if you have 2 guarantors, they will give. But that's even tough for certain startups or the micro level people to start up. So what we are trying to do now is to create a consort, like a group of banks to get into development banking, rather trying to create a new bank. We spoke to People's Bank, NSB, RDB, and we are getting more on board, so that from their risky portfolio of investments, obviously they call it SMEs are risky, in that portfolio give us a portion of the funds to about 50 billion, so that when some SME or a startup come through the development program, that they are having a certain discipline, they have their accounts done, they have a proper feasibility, they have the knowledge given by the NEDA or Z, that they become eligible for a 1 million loan without collateral. So that is, we are trying to reduce the risk of the bank. And so that when they use that particular seed funding, and then when they do better, your credit score keeps going on. And the other side, the government treasury is now giving, there's a plan for a credit guarantee scheme. So credit guarantee scheme is also beneficial for the SMEs, because as I heard, Doctor correct me, for 1 million, it's about 10,000 rupees. And it will take care of about 60 to 70% of the risk. So then the banks are willing to lend. So we are willing to work with the savings banks and even the commercial banks. We invite so that when there's a structured program on a life cycle management, where the government is holding hand with the SME so that their various inherent risks are mitigated, so that the banks are more willing to give funding at a lower rate. And also, we are looking to open a venture capital fund. Government will put some money initially in, and then we will ask for high net worth investors and even the corporate sector to be part of that fund. There are a few funds already available, but a purpose-driven fund that can, facilitate a particular industry or a few industries. So those are the things on the funding side.
Okay.
And we really want to get a rating, like a performance rating for SMEs. So when their rating goes up, that the credit availability and the access to market, those should unlock. Because for SMEs, and I mean mostly in Sri Lanka, 70% or 80% are informal. And there is no incentive for our SMEs to get into a formal thing. But what we are now trying to do is, if you get into the formal structure, if you come through the process, there is something beneficial for you that's going to unlock as you go along your journey. So that's what we want to do. That's what you are planning.
Thanks, Chaturanga. Mangala, so today we've heard about coconuts being this important. Before your panel we had, and I was quite...
I heard
yes,
the panel.
but it also says it's a simple thing which is doable, and there seems to be a bottleneck, and this is for you. While you're looking at grand, big plans and transformation growth, there are low-hanging fruits which we can unlock for existing exporters, and where we already have a right to play and win here. Like the coconut example, where we have to allow imports, and I think the Unilever CEO chairman was mentioning that they have capacity, but there's no method when they import raw materials at the import border point. They get taxed for the raw materials, unified taxation, irrespective of the fact that some of these are being sent for re-export.
And not exactly, Kasturi. I think we have a TEEP scheme.
Yeah, so that complication is, the TEEP scheme means you have to couple in 2 different containers. When it comes in one container where the same product is re-exported, they eventually pay a tariff, and they re-export it. They cannot re-export because it's not competitive. So my question to you, Mangala, is while you export and there's existing products, how do you work with other institutions like the customs and the finance ministries to take the problems like what they have existing capacity, they have a market where they can access, but they have a tariff which somehow people don't know how to sort out because it comes in the same container. Or the second thing is like Rajita's on coconut, why they don't allow them to import coconut on protection. So it goes back to the stage, same old thing, do we as private sector push for import substitution, or do we look for export industrial growth? How do you work within the other institutions to unlock this? And do you need to change, or do you have to have a different method of addressing it going forward to get an outcome? The second institution I would like to understand is on existing, even to get new markets, you need FTAs. How do you engage with the relevant ministries and the private sector? Is there a forum, or is there a place where you all come together to engage and come with the outcome to win?
First questions, Kasturi, now regarding the coconut. So right now in the export sector, we are having nearly 800 million export revenue from the coconut. But that is not the real, because we can further improve. But you know, Sri Lanka coconut cultivation, nearly 3 million nuts, 3 billion nuts per annum. So from that 3 billion, 1.8 billion is the domestic production, domestic users, and the 1.2 billion coming to the export sector. So that is not the enough, because we have a lot of demand. Even Coconut Cultivation Board and a lot of exporters, they came and discussed with us how we are going to settle down. So this matter, Kasturi, now, that is why yesterday I mentioned about that we have to discuss this kind of bottleneck. EDCM is there. So we are planning to discuss this matter from the next EDCM meeting. The problem is we are going to have it quarterly basis. Anyway, next 2-month period, anyway, Sri Lankan coconut cultivation also, we are not getting the 100% yield. So it may be a month of February and March will the same period. So this year it is forecasting 2.8 billion coconut nuts. That means we are having the 200 million shortage. So Kasturi, that kind of issue, what we are trying to do is now EDCM, Export Development Minister Council. So we are discussing these critical issues because this is a very much nation issue. We have to discuss with the relevant authority and take proper action. So with the new government, I believe that we don't have any bottlenecks. We don't have anything because even we can go and discuss with the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Industry, this kind of issue. So relevant the coconut matter, hopefully we are going to discuss and settle down within the next couple of few months, few weeks.
Yeah. I think, let me add, so it's, we got involved from Ministry of Industries because it was running around. So that's what I said, the value chain, even the Ministry of Industries want to improve exports and support the industry. The problem is at the agriculture department. So we got everybody together for the first time. We are thankful for the coconut industry. You guys are coming together. Because early the farmers were separate, the value adders were separate, the exporters were separate, because there's always a conflict in the industry. You have a constraint. You have a constraining, the nuts are the constraint and everybody's demanding because it's the coconut oil producers want it, we want to eat, and somebody wants to export. It's a conflict. So that's why I said early, our value chains in Sri Lanka are conflicting among each other. They are not talking to each other. So the first time the association came together, it was easy for us. So we looked at all the stakeholders, how do we facilitate all three stakeholders? And we got the paper done. Actually, it will go to the next cabinet meeting. But we won't get initially the approval for the coconut to come. But coconut-related, chips and milk and semi-processed thing to come for the initial phase. But then we have to work with the quarantine department and the agriculture department to understand how other countries do it and quickly within next few months to get through the rest of the process. So that's where we are. Just want to clear to everyone. It's
and
sorted.
Mangala, to add to your EDCM, so while I'm hearing there's a lot of weightage and put on EDCM and a lot of our success on how we operate might work. While it brings up a table for everybody to talk and share views and understand the problem and agree, the success in South Korea, which had a similar model, was where of course, again, the state chaired it, so which is the same. But there the state or the chair also made sure it was monitored and implemented. So my question to you is, while you talk, who takes accountability to make sure it's monitored and implemented as well?
So now the EDCM, we are going to have it every quarterly basis. So now, based on the industry key issues, we are going to discuss and take a decision on the table. So that is the EDCM matter. Now, EDCM has a power to take a necessary action because the Honorable HE is there. He is the decision maker, including other ministries. So what we are trying to do is, now the EDCM, there is a procedure. So we have to identify the key issues. So we have to discuss with the relevant ministries. They have to come with a solution to the table. So based on the industry issues, we are going to have a corrective decision. So then we have the follow-up mechanism as well. So every quarterly, we are going to follow-up mechanism, then we can have the progress of the previous EDCM meeting. So Kasturi, this is the way. Now EDCM, as I mentioned earlier, when we are going to export sector, actually Export Development Board also cannot work alone because there are so many regulations and the policy decision making to be there. And our exporters also, they also can't all the time a solution from the Export Development Board. And when they go to the relevant ministries, they are also stuck with the relevant approval level. So EDM is the key issue. EDM is the solution for everything. Okay, in future, because President has given the green light, he's willing to meet this, he's willing to take this EDCM every quarter. So he's trying to settle down all the key issues in the export sector. So that is why for the government side, we have received the good direction, good political leadership, including other ministers. So most of the key area, we can settle down. For an example, now, even now, when you look at some key issues, for an example, I can give you that. We had a lot of issues with the VAT issue because foreigners, they are coming to Sri Lanka because when they purchase gem and jewelry or whatever the products, they can't get the VAT refund. So that EDCM, we took a decision to set up new mechanism to VAT refund this system. That's also a good thing. Other thing is we can mention, we are going to create a new investor facilitation committee, export-led investment. Whoever exporters who are coming from international or locally, if they are willing to start the export business, we have a special committee. So they are going to give the approval within limited time period. So otherwise, you know that when you go to the relevant ministries, it will take some time. Those kind of new actions we have taken to implement, mitigate these key issues.
Okay, thanks, Mangala. Arjuna, so from BOI's perspective, what are the thrust sectors identified as investments by BOI? And for you to make that work, how do you interact with whether you need FTAs or whether you need the finance ministry's approval for special incentives to attract, or you need investments in technology to create capability? How are you working with them, or are you doing it in isolation?
Yeah, thanks. So one of the low-hanging fruits is the hospitality sector. So clearly, President has given directions that, Sri Lanka Tourism Board holds 3,000 acres of land. He has told them that these need to be zoned and put out for tender for the hospitality sector. That would mean for hotels, restaurants, entertainment, and so on and so forth. So we'll see that happening very quickly. That's the leadership instructions and direction. So hospitality will be, and then we as BOI will get involved in facilitating investments to what's been tendered. And we will, try and we will have BOI concessions that will come for investments over a certain threshold, and that will be enticing for these. And we'll also work with the Sri Lanka Tourism Board to package those things that have been put out for tender so that these are over a certain threshold which will actually derive some concessions. So that's a low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of interest on renewable energy. I don't know whether the audience heard recently, President went public with this. The aspiration of the government, today the consumer gets electricity at 13 to 14 US cents per unit. Aspiration is to bring it down to 8 cents per unit. And the aspiration of the government is to have a 70% renewable energy component in the mix of energy development. And if that has to happen, the renewable energy has to be bought at less than 5 cents US dollars. And in order to get to 70% of renewable energy, there's a requirement for 10,000 acres of land. And it has been clearly identified. The ECB has been given instructions to see where the grid capacities are and tender out these projects where the lands are available. And that, we believe, is another impetus that will come for renewable energy investments. And we believe that will actually impact drastically. And it's a policy decision the government has given, which also will help to bring down the energy costs to industry. I told logistics very clearly. Logistics is a heavy, important industry for us. And we believe, already HIPAG, which is Hambantota Port, has been given instructions. They are also a hub and a port, and they are looking at joint venture with, top-of-the-range shipping lines to increase traffic and a logistics hub there, and we are monitoring them and we are pushing them for that. Colombo Port chairman has clearly come out very clearly saying he's going to have 3 logistics hubs. We're trying to create infrastructure, entreport facility. BOI approved, we have already got 3, we are creating 2 more so that the logistics operation will have the duty-free concession, so on and so forth. Throughput, it'll come, process, go out without customs involvement so that that process is very efficient. Technology sector has been always a thrust industry for Sri Lanka. We have not got to the aspirations we have wanted of 1.5 billion to more. I think we are now around 5 billion aspiration. And in respect to that, we have decided to revive two technology parks, one in Galle and one Kurunegala, which actually was conceptualized earlier, but never got off the ground and full steam. And we are looking at actually putting them on a PPP basis, which means the technology park will be given to operator. He will develop the infrastructure. He will manage and operate it and market for outside investors. And it supplement BOI efforts. And also the infrastructure will be developed in a way that the demand will be generated. So from a technology industry, we are looking at clearly the technology sector. I spoke about the pharma industry. We clearly want to push this. It's not an easy industry, but we are looking at getting into that, pushing that, and also the textiles and fabric. So about 5-6 industries from an immediate perspective to put on ground some FDI.
Thanks. On pharma, there is a question from the public. While it's encouraging to know you are focusing on a pharma zone, what are you all doing to clean up the lag and the delays you see in the regulatory in the NMRA?
So this is from an API perspective. So question was about?
The regulator, the NMRA.
NMRA. Now, I must say the pharma industry is also for exports. There will be a lab for local market above 5 million threshold US dollar. They'll have the market access, but otherwise it'll be for exports.
But Arjuna, I've been previous history, we invested. We were the largest investment of 22 million. Nobody supported us, the government didn't. In fact, the buyback was taken away. But to export, you have to have domicile, in-market presence of 2 years of sale.
Yes.
So you need supporting those industries, but for that the regulator comes in place. So I think you should think through that, because that was a question from public.
For sure. No, for sure, we are conscious of that.
So I'm conscious of the time, but there are a few last questions. One roundup is, I think, Dr. Harshana, there's one specific question to you. What would you want from private sector to support you in terms of the changes you're going to look at going forward?
The most important part is to be part of this change. As President also mentioned yesterday, we need to give the hope to the generations, to our youth, that there are opportunities in Sri Lanka, and those opportunities provide a dignified lifestyle to youngsters in Sri Lanka. So they will start getting engaged. We know there are so many vacancies in the private sector as well, and similarly, there are so many available out there willing to work also. And from the government side, we are willing to, and we are determined to listen to you, to engage with you, to work with you, to understand your issues, and to facilitate, be a solution provider to the challenges that you have. So the request is to get engaged. There are structures available, such as the chambers. There are so many different avenues. If there are pressing issues, reach out to us with the solutions and suggestions also. Let's work together. There may be not solutions, instant solutions that we may be looking for, as the required amount of investments have not gone into certain sectors in the economy, in the country, into the institutions. So as a result, in this transition period, there will be challenges. So let's work together. We do understand your issues and challenges. You need to reach out to your customers on a timely manner, in an effective manner, at a competitive price also. There will be temporary challenges, or rather discussions, that we need to have with you all, but we are willing and determined. So let's work together to create the solutions that you are looking for, and we are willing to and ready to facilitate that. Government will invest onto those solutions. As I said, as I mentioned earlier also, we will deliver the digitization that businesses are looking for. We want to deliver the efficiency from the government service that businesses are looking forward to. To do that one, we need to hear your feedback. You want to get your help, assistance, and engagements also. Thank you.
Okay. So this is to everybody. If this audience, 6 months from now, if they look back and look at what you've said, while you all have KPIs, is there one KPI which we will be focusing on delivering in the next 6 months? if so, what it is, so that when we look back in 6 months, we can look at it and see whether it succeeded.
So critical infrastructure requirements in terms of connectivity, digital connectivity particularly, as I mentioned, there are 34 different institutions currently supporting onto importation and exportation activities, importation of raw material for local industries, exporting of to your customers in the value chain. And out of those 34 institutions, 9 of them play a critical role or regular interactions with importers and exporters. So we want to make sure those 9 agencies who are supporting imports and exports are connected to the national system, which is currently not. They are provided, the option is there for those institutions to get connected since 2016, but they have not connected. So a quick win that we are looking for is within the next 6 months, those 9 agencies, number 1, to connect to the national framework. Number 2, within a short period of time, it may go slightly beyond the 6 months period, have their own system also, so people don't have to come to their agencies to get their work done. But we know it's not a unified solution. They may have to lodge the same document to several agencies, but that could be done online instead of doing it, walking into the agency.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
a quick win.
Chaturanga, from your side, what
Yes,
can we
I
look
think
at?
from Ministry of Industry side, the one thing that we can look forward within 6 months is to have a clear, agreed strategy with the industry and the Ministry of Industries. So that means if you take a particular industry, where is your end goal? What you want to become, how energy efficient you want to become, what is your workforce looks like, and that entire game plan, we want all of you to work with us to come and agree for, as the government and the sector to deliver. So I think within 6 months, we will have clarity in terms of where each of these industries are going, what are their short-term, long-term goals, and what are their bottlenecks, and what the government is going to do in the next few years to debottleneck it. I think that's the biggest achievement we want to get within 6 months.
Thank you, and I hope you get that. Arjuna, from your side, what can we expect as a KPI? Private sector, so you're used to that language as well.
Yes,
So.
yes, for sure. No, so clearly our aspiration is to grow this year in 2025 beyond 5%. We are growing in 2024. We are expecting to grow 5%. And in order for that, we need investments. Clearly, the savings in this country is 18%. Public investment commitment has been already made by President in the coming budget. Hopefully 7%, 8%, which will get up to 25%. But at current efficiency rates of our investments, which is at 40%, if we are to get to 7%, we have to invest significantly 40% of our GDP kind of quantum. That is tough, but my request and our aspiration is to work with the local investors to try and uplift. They have to take a lead. And I want this audience and the chamber to get to investments. They must bring in joint ventures. They must get in their suppliers to be here and not look for other markets to get to doing exports. And our aspiration is to try and attract them and put them on ground, link the supply chain to them, and hopefully work with the...
So Arjuna, if I try to distill it into 6 months, what really you would do? Are you creating a market for them to come and talk to you and say, I want to invest? Or do you have a number you have in mind saying, I want this much of investment we are going to bring in to the from the BOI in the next 6 months?
Yeah, clearly our target will be our aspiration.
No, within the 6 months, do you have a roadmap of like, I want to bring so many billions?
Yeah, our yearly target is 2 billion, and we will want to get to half of that at least. With, of course, President who's gone and brought in certain investment, we are hoping we can put them on ground and actually mobilize. We have the logistics center, we have the refinery. Those are very good foundation and a good start for us, and we are hoping that we'll mobilize that.
Thanks. I'm glad you brought the private sector, but I think one leaf is learned from Korea is the government also created the space and the industries for the private sector to invest. So maybe that is something. Mangala, what's your short-term, doable, low-hanging fruit we can look at?
Thank you. We have to think this positively, because when you set the target for the 36 billion, everybody asked that you can do this. Can you do this target? because still we are in that narrow-minded situation.
Okay.
For an example, we and Vietnam in the same situation in 1995. They were doing 4 billion, Sri Lanka was in the 4 billion, 1995. Where is Vietnam today? They are contributing more than 400 billion US dollars from the export income. Sri Lanka, still we are struggling with the 15, 16 billion export revenue. So we want to go beyond 20 billion. So we can see now the government positively, because we can see that next 5 years, political stability there. In the current government side, now that we have the good direction, the leadership, and the private sector involvement also there for the country. And the interest rate and the tourist income to Sri Lanka, and the good governance, transparency in the procurement, when you look at everything, there will be very much positive side. We have the very much good action plan for the next 6 months. Each and every month we are monitoring this. So this year, compared with the last year, because last year we have taken only the 7% growth. So this year we are expecting 13% growth from the export sector, each and every sector. We have the good mechanism. We will be evaluating those mechanisms every month. And we expand from the corporate sector. Your support is very much appreciated, because you are the capable people who are having a lot of connection with internationally. We can change our export sector with the 2 products. One thing is the electrical, ICT, transport and logistics, and the apparel. If you can get together, if you can change this, definitely target will be beyond that. We expect your support. We are evaluating our process in every month. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Dr. Harchana, Chaturanga, Arjuna, and Mangala, for being open and candid and willing to come to this panel discussion. I know, Chaturanga, you need to leave, so can you all please come and take care?